This is a Channel 4 News special report. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Moyer in the Channel 4 newsroom. We are awaiting momentarily an update on the condition of the incomparable Laker broadcaster Chick Hearn, who at the age of 85 has lain in a hospital at Northridge in a coma, and we are told on limited life support. We were told earlier today, as I check our camera to see if the doctors are coming out, we were told earlier today that the family has issued what is called a DNR, do not resuscitate order on Chick Hearn, and we're waiting momentarily for word on his condition.
Now I'd like to call up Dr. Taban, who is the neurosurgeon who is Chick's physician. Dr. Taban.
Good afternoon. As we had a discussion this morning with regard to Chick's status, I did indicate that we were going to run a number of different tests to determine, if possible, the cause of his current condition and also the level of function of his brain. One of the tests that we did, which appeared to be a very important one, was the brain stem evoked potential, which disclosed to us that he did encounter irreversible injury to his brain stem. We ran a number of different other tests, but however, his brain stem appeared to be the main cause of his coma and not responding to all the treatment that we did for his hemorrhage in different parts of the brain. This time I'm available. If any questions remain unresolved, I'll be happy to answer to any question. I just want at the end thank all of my colleagues who helped me in this matter and allowed me to proceed to do what I was able to do.
Doctor, when you tell us if Chick Hearn had to be removed from life support, can you tell us how he passed away?
No, Chuck was not removed from life support. He was remained on the respirator.
Doctor,
until the end.
Doctor, realistically, you've dealt with this cases similar to this before. What were Chick's chances when he entered the hospital realistically? You never really had much of a
Actually, yes. The question is that what was Chick's chance when he came to the hospital? Before we went forward with the surgery, we had perhaps half an hour or 45 minutes discussing with the family. Marge and Mr. Steiner was there, and I personally felt that the chance that he had was 1 out of 10. This is what the chance I gave. I felt that there was no chance without any intervention, and the chance with intervention was 1 out of 10. And the decisions finally was made by Marge to proceed.
Dr. Taban, did his blood ever clot in the procedures?
As we discussed before, we had a major problem with the clotting mechanism. But at the conclusion of the second surgery, his clotting mechanism was pretty much controlled. He did not re-bleed after that. As we were measuring his intracranial pressure constantly, his pressure was well maintained intracranially. That was the reason we stopped all of the narcotics 4 o'clock yesterday morning, because of his intracranial pressure was controlled. So his bleeding eventually stopped. But it seemed that at the time of initial trauma, when he fell, the hemorrhage also occurred in his brainstem. The brainstem is a very tight area, and you don't need too much of blood to get in serious trouble. As a result, if you have even a small punctate hemorrhages in the brainstem, you could still remain in the coma forever without even having any blood clot on top of the brain or within the brain in other areas. So retrospective, with today's test, it seems that his brainstem was initially badly damaged.
Doctor, to what extent did the two surgeries help at all, and did his health problems in the past year, his heart problems, play any role in this?
The heart problem, I would say that the problem is related to the heart because he was on Coumadin for his long-term atrial fibrillation. It was arrhythmia of his heart, and he had to be on Coumadin. The Coumadin is unfortunately has a lot of advantage. At the same time, there are disadvantages of that medication. Interesting enough, Marge told me that Chick told her just the same Friday morning that he's tired of Coumadin and he wants to stop it because he had some skin lesions and small hemorrhages under his skin. So the problem indeed started from the heart because the Coumadin was necessary for the heart problem that he had.
Doctor,
Did
can you
he
tell us what that
never
drug?
regain consciousness?
No, he never regained his consciousness. No.
Can you tell us what that drug did? Why it complicated things? Coumadin.
Because that thins the blood and prevents the clotting mechanism. So if you injure yourself, then that clotting will not help and the blood continue to ooze or come out. And as I said earlier today, he also developed another bleeding problem, and that's happened with a head injury patient called DIC, which the body consumes all the clotting mechanism as a result of this cascade of enzymatic changes of the brain. So he had two difficulties with his coagulation, which both were very serious.
Doctor, you said
Yes.
in the beginning you weren't sure what induced the coma. You told us to be careful not to call it a drug-induced coma. You weren't
Right.
certain. Is it possible that this all began with a stroke? Could that have caused his fall to begin with?
From what I understand, momentarily he was able to talk to Marge after he fell, and then he went into coma. It is possible you had a stroke and then you fall. It is hard to say really. Without going through a more detailed angiographic study would be very difficult. So still I can't say, but it appears to me at this time that he indeed had a major insult immediately after his fall. And what we were trying to rectify, it was another part of his illness, which was all the clotting difficulty and blood clot on top of the brain, inside the brain. But indeed, the brainstem very likely was injured badly from beginning.
Can you summarize for us why his chances were only 1 in 10 when he came to the hospital?
Because when I saw him, his neurological function was very, very low, at low level neurological function. I have not seen him before he was intubated, so I couldn't really be 100% sure whether this amount of neurological dysfunction he's presenting is anything to do with the drug related for intubation, or this is really the extent of his problem at the time of arrival.
Doctor, is this
Yes.
the type of injury that a normal, healthy person who had fallen would have suffered or been given the same odds, or was it just because of his age and his physical conditions that caused this?
Well, the question is that in a younger person, if he falls, will have the same problem, or age and Chick and the Coumadin had a major effect. Obviously, his age was important, and the older we are, the more fragile vessel we have. So if you sustain any trauma to any part of your body, you will have more of a problem because of fragility of the vessels. Falling on the concrete it is usually associated with a very serious head injury because it doesn't give. And if you're 6'4" tall and falling just backward with a Coumadin, you are in a really in a bad shape to begin with.
We'll take two more questions, and then Dr. Taban will be here afterwards for additional questions or comments.
We have Elgin Beller.
Oh, Bill, we have some people.
Doctor,
Yes.
you are obviously familiar with Chick, who he was and all that. Can you tell about your feelings now? How do you feel?
I really feel that we have lost the icon. It was very hard for me to deal with it from the beginning in terms of his personality and knowing him. But since we have been doing this for 25 years, technically I had no difficulty to do what I want to do, even though only by knowing him made me even more vigorous to do as much as possible to do. Not only me, everybody else in the team, they tried their best to do because we know of how much he was loved by the entire family and the group and the whole country.
That's good. Well, Dr. Taban will still be available in a few minutes. I'd like to call Bob back up now for some additional introductions and comments.